Hey guys, this is going to be video notes for section 2 in our first unit, the road to World War II, just for those who need to get caught up or want to review. All right, so where we left off in section 1 is we have our two dictators in Europe in place, Benito Mussolini with Italy, El Duce, and Adolf Hitler in Germany, both creating a fascist dictatorship in their countries and both using the Treaty of Versailles to fire up their people. And where we ended was with looking at how the world reacted to, particularly, Hitler's aggression and Germany starting to rebuild its military, starting to take back territory that surrounded it, and stopping paying reparations. And what the world did about it was appease these dictators. It means they did nothing about it. They let them get away with it, hoping that they'd be happy. And as we said, the bully just got stronger and stronger. All right. So at some point, they are going to need to stand up to him and draw a line in the sand. Okay. So that's where we pick up with Europe going to war. All right. So what caused Britain and France to abandon this policy of appeasement? Well, after getting the Sudetenland, Hitler then invaded and took control of all Czechoslovakia. All right. At this point, Britain and France warned Germany and warned Hitler that any further aggression would mean war. All right. I said that we got to draw a line in the sand. If you go any further, we have no choice but to declare war. And they signed an agreement with Hitler's next target, which is Poland. All right, to come to their aid if attacked. Poland was a sovereign European country, not necessarily like the other countries that Hitler had already taken control of. Those were previously a part of Germany. And so Poland, whole different story. The Polish do not want any part of being a part of the Germany's Third Reich. And so Britain and France sign an agreement that will come to their aid. Okay. Now, Hitler is going to invade Poland, but before he does, he needs to get something squared away. And that's going to be with his arch enemy, all right, Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union. They shock the world when they come to an agreement, all right? They make a pact with one another. So here we want to look at what that pact was and why each side would make it, all right? Hitler and Stalin, as I said, were hated enemies. They did not like each other. They did not like each other's countries. Stalin hated fascism. Hitler hated communism. They did not agree with one another politically, philosophically. And so it shocks the world when they agreed to a 10-year non-aggression pact. All right. This is not an alliance. All right. This is not a friendship. It is essentially an agreement to not invade each other's country for 10 years. All right. It's I hate you, you hate me, but let's hate each other without bothering each other for 10 years. We both have things we need to do and accomplish, so let's leave each other alone. Okay. So let's look at why each side agreed to this. Stalin still needed time to catch up with becoming an industrial power. All right. So his series of 5-year plans that he'd implemented, he's not there yet. He needs his country to continue building as an industrial power. So he's focused internally and he needs to buy time. He says, I know I'm going to have to fight this guy probably eventually, but we're not ready yet. And so we need to continue to build our industries so that we can build up an army and firepower to be ready. All right. Hitler, if you remember the Schlieffen plan from last year in World War I, he did not want to fight a two-front war. All right. So he wanted to be able to conquer all of Europe without having to worry about the Soviet Union. Rather than splitting his military up and going to fight half against the Soviet Union over here and half against France and Great Britain over in Europe, he said, if I can make an agreement with this dude, then I'll go ahead and invade whenever I'm ready to, whether that's 10 years from now or not, because it's not going to be. Okay. The secret part of this pact will divide Eastern Europe among the Soviet Union and Germany. So with all that set in place, on September 1st, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. On September 3rd, true to their word, 2 days later, Britain and France declare war on Germany. World War II has begun in Europe. All right. That's why this date right here, September 1st, 1939, is seen as the official start of World War II. Okay. And Germany is going to go on the attack, and they are going to be a hard machine to stop. Okay. Describe the new form of attack that Germany is going to use in Europe. The alliance of Britain, France, and Poland had the advantage of just more manpower, sheer numbers. All right, if you count the military, they had bigger militaries, but they're not going to be able to get there in time as far as Britain and France is concerned. All right, and Poland is going to be overwhelmed because Germany had the advantage of superior firepower, and they're going to use this new method of attack in World War II that's called blitzkrieg. It means lightning war. It's a fast, concentrated air and land attack in essentially three phases. The first phase is with the Luftwaffe. German planes called Stukas dive bomb enemy defenses and terrorize civilians, causing havoc on the ground. The second phase is going to be Panzer tank divisions that are going to punch through enemy lines. And then finally, bring in troops. Infantry comes in to finish the job and occupy the country. Using blitzkrieg, Germany is going to capture Poland in a month, all right, 30 days. And they're going to capture Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands in essentially days, all right? This is going to be too quick for British and French troops to even come to the aid of Poland or the rest of Europe. And they're actually going to get stuck with their back against the English Channel in what is going to become known as the miracle at Dunkirk. Over 400,000 troops are essentially surrounded by Germany's military, and Winston Churchill is going to call on a mass evacuation by sea and call on any floating vessel in Great Britain to get across the English Channel and rescue these troops. They're going to rescue 340,000 of them, and that's the biggest evacuation by sea in history up until 9/11, when over 1 million people were evacuated from Manhattan Island in New York. All right. So that'll come into play later because all those almost 500,000 troops that were rescued will be used again in 3.5 years when we get to D-Day. Okay. So, number 4, how did Hitler take France? Following the retreat of numerous British and French troops at Dunkirk, Hitler's army swept south and they marched right into Paris. All right. Under the treaty terms, France still controlled the southern part of their country under what's called the Vichy government, but this is a huge accomplishment for Germany. It's going to shock the world because in all of World War I, the closest Germany got to Paris was 20 miles. And here in under a year, they had conquered France. So the last enemy to lay in Hitler's way, all right, I'll show you this map here, is going to be this right here, Great Britain. All right, the last speck of freedom in just a year's time. This is going to all essentially look like this. All of this conquered, everything in red is Germany's conquest, and Italy's down here. And Great Britain is going to be the last enemy to lay in Hitler's way, and he's going to go after it, but he's going to go after it in a different way. All right, so Britain was it. All right, he is going to, rather than a invasion, which would be very costly because Britain's an island nation protected by water on all sides, he's going to, instead of risking his military, his troops, he's going to unleash the Luftwaffe in the greatest air assault that the world had ever seen. This is called the Blitz, and it's going to go for a little over a month, starting in August of 1940, where he's going to send 1,000 planes per day to bomb the daylights out of Great Britain. Now, at the start, they were ordered to only bomb industrial sites like factories and roads and bridges and things like that. But in late August, a few German bombers strayed off course and dropped their bombs on London, the capital city of Great Britain. In order to combat, the ability to be seen from the sky and from the ground, German bombers always did these bombing raids at night. Well, to combat that, British civilians held blackouts in British cities and shut out the lights to make themselves invisible. So, accidentally, London was bombed. In retaliation, British bombers bombed Berlin a couple nights later. All right. The importance of that is from this point on, both sides were turned to civilian targets. All right. That's why about 95% of those killed in World War II were civilians. They were not in uniform. The targets are going to be the enemy's cities, their churches, their homes, their schools. And that's going to be how World War II continues for the next 4 years. Okay. The effects of this, over 20,000 are going to die in London and 70,000 were injured. Two other effects is that civilian bombings would continue throughout the war. This is total war. to get the enemies, break the enemy's spirit, to get them to call on their country to stop fighting. But in the end, Britain would hold out, and Hitler would never take Britain, which would be important down the road as a staging ground when D-Day comes around on June 6, 1944, and the eventual invasion of Europe to retake it back from Nazi Germany. Okay. Last section we'll cover today here in section 3. Now we'll turn our focus to the whole other side of the earth and put what's going on in Europe on hold. All right, Japan. Japan is going to be our third bully that's going to make up the Axis powers here. So we're going to look at how they start to build an empire in the Pacific. Japan had been an ally during World War I, and between World War I and through the 1930s, early 1930s, Japan essentially was a good friend of ours too. They were a peaceful nation. They'd helped to create the League of Nations. They'd signed numerous peace agreements with the world, and they had a democracy like us. But after World War I, Japan's economy suffered a depression, as well as the rest of the world, and many began to blame the problems in Japan on democracy itself and said, we need a strong military government to take over in order to solve our problems. Also during this time, as all countries do following industrialization, they experienced a huge population explosion, right? This would be a problem for Japan as a small island nation, unlike the vast territory of the United States or of the Soviet Union, right? They lacked the needed land to feed their population, natural resources for their industries, and markets to sell their goods to, all right? And important, the United States went through these problems, all right, especially this one with markets, if you guys remember imperializing us last year. But Japan missed out on imperialism, all right? They did not have colonies or other territories to take this from. And at this point in the 1930s, the whole world had been imperialized and split up in pieces of the pie to the other empires. And so the only way to take and get territories would be to take it from somebody else who already has it. And that's going to make people mad, okay? So a military government did take over to solve their problems, and they looked to expansion, okay? Where are they going to look to expand? They're going to look to a neighbor of theirs that they already hate anyways, that is a vast country with the largest population in the world and a huge landmass that could solve all of their problems, all right? They're going to look to China, okay? They're going to use the Manchurian incident to give them an excuse to invade the northern part of China, known as Manchuria. They're going to set up a puppet state called Manchukuo. Essentially, they're going to set up a bombing of a railway there and blame it on the Japanese and say, yep, this is what we got to do. Okay, Japan is going to withdraw from the League of Nations, knowing it's going to be an aggressor. So, well, we better get out of this peaceful organization. And then they are going to proceed in the late 1930s to brutally invade all of China, including what is going to become known as the Rape of Nanking. All right, we're literally, this is why China suffers the second loss of life of all in World War II, just behind the Soviet Union, because there is going to be mass murder of Chinese civilians, rape of hundreds of thousands of women. It's going to be ugly stuff in China. The Japanese see the Chinese as a subhuman species equal to pigs, and they're going to be treated that way. All right, Japan is then going to sign a tripartite pact with the other two bullies in this story, which is Germany and Italy, and they're going to be ready to go. All right. Final thing they need to get set up, though, is just like Germany did, they want to keep one of the world powers out of it, and that's the Soviet Union. They're going to sign an agreement with the Soviet Union to remain neutral, and they are going to do that for a while. Okay. Last section in this unit is going to be, we'll turn our focus to the United States. All right. Why do we go from isolationism to war? Okay. Have a good day.